clear.
Hello, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another one of our live streams. You may have noticed we've come slightly themed for this session, just to prove these aren't pre-recorded in July. I'm joined this evening by Father
They
Christmas
are, of course they're.
and one of his fairies, Adrian and Paul. Good evening, Adrian. Firstly, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm very good. You've taken this dressing up business extremely seriously. This is about as Christmassy as my jumpers get, but you've won on that front.
Well, I don't actually have a Christmas jumper, but I do have a Santa's outfit. So
Stunning in many ways. Paul, you've gone for the sort of more illuminated look, although Adrian is rocking a light. I'm scared at how well those lights go with your shirt.
One try. We are light and land after all. So I'm doing the light bit. I don't know who's doing the grounded land bit.
We'll do the I'll do the grounded land bit.
I like the way your hat flops a little, Sam.
It's been a long day.
Yeah, that's why I needed this. If I had something flashing, I thought it would take away any emphasis on what I might say during the rest of the night.
You just hope to stun us with your lights, basically. Yeah. Nice. Well, there's already some comments coming in about our about our attire. Mostly good, I would say. Maybe if we had the old vote system, we could have asked for who won the vote. I'm pretty worried that I just wouldn't have come anywhere near that, though. So let's leave that one alone.
Well, I think we would have to. He looks like Father. He's got a beard. He's like Santa's little helper.
Yeah, a couple more years to go.
He has the advantage of age. Right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another one of these live stream sessions. A slightly cheeky start. Obviously, we're wishing you all festive joyousness throughout wherever you may be. Thank you for letting us know where you are. Lots of friendly names and faces and all the usual locations which are coming in. Oh my God, it must be Christmas, says Jen. It is, very nearly. At least we didn't do it in October like Sainsbury's. Tonight, we're going to be taking you on a black and white feast for your eyes to the wonderful Prague with my lovely chums here, Adrian and Paul, who are, I can say, black and white connoisseurs. Before we get to that, little note from Debbie, Paul's shirt is louder than Adrian's for a change.
I wanted to get it there. I was just trying to work out how many years old this shirt is. It's about nearly 30 years old.
that may have come from some of the fashion shoots.
Wow.
Yeah. It's unfortunately he wasn't doing the fashion himself. So let's get to the images, everybody. If you are joining us, let us know. And do pop us a little like there, especially if you're appreciating our hard work in entertaining you with our wonderful attire this evening. We will take any questions to do with Prague, to do with black and white, to do with Christmas hats, Paul's shirts, or Adrian's beard. So do line those up as we come. But I think let's get semi-serious for a second, chaps. Prague is somewhere I've never. Well, why exactly? Yes, it's somewhere I've never been. I'm going to hold my hands up, but it's somewhere I have a concept of how it looks and the atmosphere, and some of that we're going to kind of touch on, and also some different ways of looking at it we're going to touch on tonight as well, which is really cool. There is, I don't know who's going to get to Joseph Sudek first, but I'm sure one of us will. Who's a very well-known photographer who used to work in Prague, but that sort of imagery is very much embedded in my mind. But before we do, actually, I don't know who wants to take this, but originally, how did the tour come about? Had one of you already had that running, or was that a joint thing together?
Well, we kind of, discussed, we just started up that idea of the black and white in the city in London. And, it just occurred to me that it would be lovely to take it on the road. So, and then there were a number of suggestions, and I think Prague popped up pretty quickly as one of the places that was popular. So and it sort of, I don't know why, but it kind of seems like a black and white city in my head anyway. It always seemed to have that. It conjured that up for me. So
Cool. And Paul, had you done much traveling there before, or was it fairly new for you to explore it?
No, I've been to Prague a number of times, but never sort of just purely photographically. Well, certainly sort of kind of photographic exploration. I've been there kind of working as a news photographer, but never sort of kind of wandered around taking pictures of interesting things. So when Adrian was sort of talking about it, it was just a natural, because it's not far away. It's easy to get to. Majority of people there speak English. The food is good. The beer is good. It's a really easy city to navigate. So we dispatched Adrian off to do the recce, which was fantastic. And, he basically carried me throughout the entire workshop. And it was beautiful.
I think it was Helen we carried, didn't we?
Stronger than you look.
Yeah.
It was Helen we carried, yes.
No, poor old Helen had a bit of a leg issue at the time, so we took advantage of the tram system, which is one of the great features of Prague.
Cool. Well, let's get into some of the images, because we've got a nice number from both of you this evening, and we're going to start with a couple of different sort of interpretations of some of the atmosphere, I suppose. So, like I said at the top, I have this feeling of Prague as a sort of misty, cold, romantic, but kind of old-fashioned place in a way, and so some of that comes from conditions, doesn't it? And obviously whenever you have water, you're going to get certain types of conditions in cold places. So Adrian, I believe this is one of yours, so if you want to set the scene for us a little.
Yeah, so this was a morning. I mean, if you go to Prague, one of the things you're going to want to do is to get onto the Charles Bridge in the morning when the mist is rising with the lights on and up. And so we magically arranged that to happen. And it happened, and we all went out there and shot this incredible scene, which in colour you will have seen before, for sure. It's one of those classic pictures that will be on the fridge magnets. So, but actually looking around us, and we were working in black and white, looking around us, there's such beauty in the areas. This is just shot off the Charles Bridge, but not in the direction everyone else was shooting. So there's very much, that mistiness just coming across the side. So this will be on the west bank. Looking over towards the west bank, but we were on, if you kind of literally pivot 180 degrees, you will see a row of photographers shooting in the other direction, probably in color, but not our lot. We were much more interested in the mist and the softness and the atmosphere that was going on. I think it was really interesting.
Yeah, this has quite a sort of painterly feel in a way, and it's strange a bit to say that with black and white, but I think that's a word that gets thrown at color images sometimes. But some of the ambiguity perhaps in terms of distance and seeing things and those slightly hidden things, and that's a nice thing, Paul, when you get these sorts of conditions that suit black and white as well.
Oh yeah, I get so excited when it's misty like this, because it obscures so much and it leaves a lot to the imagination. There's an intrigue about what's hidden and what's revealed, and that softness as well. It almost takes you back in time too. And Prague is one of those cities that it has an atmosphere. Whatever the weather, it has an atmosphere. But I think generally best viewed in the rain or the mist. Because it helps sort of disguise some of the bits that I'm not so keen on, but that particular morning was just beautiful, and it was literally on the bridge, shooting along the bridge with all the statues. There were ranks and ranks of photographers, and there was us lot just pointing our lenses out over the bridge into the mist, and people kept wondering, going, "What are you photographing? Why aren't you photographing the bridge?" And we're like, "Well, the mist is really beautiful. The river is great. Look at the." And they couldn't understand, because we weren't shooting the Charles Bridge in the mist. We were shooting off the Charles Bridge, so we were just basically in the way of everybody else.
But when you've got people asking you, that's usually a good sign that you're doing something interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting because everyone else was there to capture the classic shot. So all they were trying to do was reproduce the picture they could have bought on the fridge magnet on the bridge, earlier that day. So obviously we were there doing something a little bit different, and it was interesting, and I think it got quite exciting at one point because there was one guy who stood in front of the ranks of people trying to take the picture, and then the rank would move forward. It's like a military operation, and the rank would move forward and absorb him whilst he was trying to do a long exposure, and then it kind of kept repeating. It was comical, but looking the other way was better.
And in terms of, you've mentioned there's a few photographers around. Other than that, I mean, it's a busy city, but at the time of year, because I know you guys go in March, and obviously all being well, you'll be going this March as well, I believe. Is it a busy, bustly sort of a place, or is there still plenty of spaces, to get around?
Yeah, I think it can be busy in the busy times, in the holiday seasons. Yeah, go on, Paul. But I think out of season, it's much better.
Yeah.
Paul's got a slight delay on his line.
And I think we go out early in the morning. Oh, have I? Oh no.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll try my best, but you'll probably talk over.
Do you want me to make it worse?
No, thank you. No, it's all good. It's all good. Paul, I'll throw to you with plenty of time. Don't worry, and we'll try not to tread on your toes on the delay, because I believe this is one of your images, and we wanted to talk about architecture. We wanted to talk about light and shade and contrast and all those beautiful things that we like to play with when we're talking about black and white. So maybe, Paul, we'll throw this to you. If you can just explain where we are here, and obviously some of the thought processes when taking these sorts of pictures to capture them in such a sort of compelling way.
Yeah, so I mean, this is just on one of the main streets along in Prague, just underneath a really beautiful little cafe that became a focal point for our trip. And the little side streets, the little alleyways, there's some really, really beautiful ones. And I was just captivated by all the arches. I'm a sucker for arches and side lighting. And I know Adrian is very similar to me when it comes to, if you're shooting in black and white and your printer uses black ink, you might as well go heavy on the black. You've paid for the ink, why not use it? So, fill the blacks in and let them bleed. So for me, it was just about creating that atmosphere of the sort of the shadows with just that lovely side light coming in. I was a bit annoyed the pigeon didn't really go where I wanted him to in the middle of the floor, but you can't control a pigeon.
You've got to try harder with the pigeons, Paul. But so am I correct in saying, and I know we've touched on this potentially in other live streams that we've done, but I'm aware that we might have some different people on tonight. Are you shooting in black and white through your live view and through your electronic viewfinder at the point of capture?
Yeah.
Yeah, I always shoot in black and white. I don't think my camera knows what the color settings are anymore. So point of capture, everything is viewed and shot in black and white and imagined as a print in black and white. So even though with my eye I can see the color, I'm imagining the colors as tones and how I want them to reproduce. And then the camera is set up to almost mirror how I see. So I've adjusted all the contrast and bits and pieces on it so the viewfinder looks like I want it to look. But always shoot in black and white. If you're going to take a picture in black and white, it's important to shoot in black and white and commit to it. Have the intention of black and white when you set out. Don't use black and white as a get out of jail card. Because a lot of people go, I'll convert it to black and white, it'll be fine. Conceive the image in black and white. Start with it right at the beginning and go all the way through in black and white, and you'll have much more success.
Yeah, definitely. You would agree with that, Adrian. You get used to seeing, don't you, in black and white in that way?
Yeah, totally. I mean, and I remember trying to do this when we were using film cameras, and I think the closest I got was something called a mono view, which is like a dark brown filter that you'd look through that would kind of give you the shades and tones without the color. And as soon as cameras came along that could do this in real time, it's just a blessing. Anybody who's been trying to do black and white photography for picking up a mirrorless camera or whatever, it's just fantastic to do that. And you start to, you forget about the colour, as Paul says. The colour is not important. It's all about the shades and the tones are black and white, and where the shadows fall and where the highlights are, and then the composition's easier. And certainly, it's one of the things that I explain to students, that if you're learning photography, just switch it into black and white whilst you're learning, because it's easier to compose. It's easier to get composition right in a black and white world than it is in a colour world. And your raw file's colour anyway, so no matter what you want to use it for. But if you're working with black and white as the end goal, why wouldn't you take it in black and white?
Absolutely. So this is very much is the three wise men tonight, everybody. So hopefully you're all picking up some tips here. I just want to pick up before we move on, lovely comment from Helen. I'll just put it back up. Love the soft light on the globes compared to the bright archways. And actually that was one of the lovely things I enjoyed too. And obviously the interplay between all the angles. And whenever you come to some of these older cities, or even cities where there's a bit of a mix of old and new, that playing with angles can be really fun. And we'll see more of that later as we go through the evening. We wanted to also just talk about the fact, though, that Prague is also, a lived-in modern city. And I know that can throw up some sort of quirky situations and scenes and images. And so, Adrian, we wanted to talk about this because it's kind of a full force busyness going on here.
Yeah, one of the real features and fun things to explore at Prague are the passageways. There are all these wonderful little interconnecting passageways between the different squares. There's lots of little squares, and between the squares there are lots of little passageways. Some of them are even quite difficult to spot, so you wouldn't necessarily know there is one. You just kind of have to be nosy and poke your nose down and wander down them. And within them, there are shops, there's sometimes cinemas, there's all kinds of things hidden inside these passageways. And they're great. And this particular florist I wandered past, I think just a little bit further up there is a cinema, and then there was an indoor, within the passageway at least, entrance to a large rock venue. And I think when I was there the first time, I think it was Gary Newman was playing there. I thought, wow. Yeah, that's another blast from the past. But but yeah, this was just beautiful. I walked past this and I thought, that is absolutely wonderful. And I guess maybe when you're looking at, you see, and this is where if you're looking at that through your camera in colour, you aren't seeing the same thing. It's a really good example of something that would have been inherently colourful, but when you're looking at it in black and white, this still makes a fabulous composition.
Can I just ask, not strictly a photographic question actually, but having been in lots of cities in Europe, especially I'm thinking of some of the key locations, Venice being one that's immediately leaping out at me. A lot of these smaller shops now are not owned by locals, are not frequented by locals, and it's sort of turned into a little bit of a kind of working, you know what I'm trying to say, like a theme park basically. But what's the vibe like in Prague? Is there still a very local kind of scene of locals coming out and buying from those small shops and things like that, Adrian?
Yeah, it seemed that way to me. I think the maybe the more obvious locations you'll see a lot more of the tourists, but out of season, if you like, it's a lot less busy. If you go in the summer, you're going to get the usual European beer bikes and all that stuff, and the parties and so on that are going on. Out of season, I didn't see any of that. We saw a few larger groups at a couple of points, but there's so much space. I didn't see that at all, and I think because there's this great big network of squares and passages and all sorts of other things to explore. There's a lot of places to get lost in. But yeah, I'm sure in the summer it's a different matter. But whilst the time we were there, it did look like it didn't feel like it was full of tourists, and the shops were only there for the tourists.
Yeah, no, that's nice because you can get a slightly different vibe from that. At the same time, there is a mix of old and new. And I'm really happy, Adrian, you put this one in because, these sorts of urban looks can vary town to town, and they can vary city to city. And it's not something necessarily, we talked about that stereotype of Prague that I may have laid out at the beginning. So it's nice to see. So obviously, is this part of a network system, or is this just an underpass kind of area you explore? Yeah,
this is just an underpass. It's up near the station, and the station itself is quite a great opportunity to get a shot down onto the railway lines and so on. So it's up in that area. It's up just beyond Wenceslas Square, the top of Wenceslas, and then you very quickly head out of what is probably the most touristy element, which is the square itself, which has a lot of typical tourist shops and so on. But as soon as you go beyond that, you're quite quickly into much more interesting local stuff. And here, this passageway led out to some really interesting concrete, which I particularly enjoy taking pictures of. So there's some nice mix of new modern buildings popping up alongside the obvious Baroque cathedrals and so on that we kind of perhaps expect to see in Prague. But there's some more interesting stuff creeping in all the time. I just really like the juxtaposition of this against the old-fashioned and the nice modern, and the graffiti which is around as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's that difference. And Paul, if I can just ask you a question on this, I know this is one of Adrian's images, but I want to talk to you about point of view. And I think one of the reasons why I enjoyed this one is because Adrian's, it feels like he's got right down closer to the ground, and it's really important, isn't it? Sometimes not just to always stay at our 5'11" or whatever we are, but to just move about, basically, to get a different view of things.
Yeah, I think it's something that we almost fall into the trap of not lowering down. I mean, for some people, bending down is difficult, but if you're able to adjusting your perspective and getting low and close to things to exaggerate sort of lines and patterns and things is a really great compositional tool, and it's right there at our disposal. And nowadays that cameras have flip out screens as well, you don't actually have to bend very far. You can lower the camera down and use the screen to get the angle, but you end up with some really dramatic pictures. I love the way these lines coming in from the left really suck you in to that light at the end of the tunnel. And we should always remember that our eye is drawn to light. So even if your picture's starting off quite dark and it's heading towards the light, you've got this acceleration through the frame. It's fantastic. I love it when you start playing with this kind of this sort of composition. You can have great fun with it and create real energy in the pictures. Nice one, Adrian. I'll give you a 10.
Yeah, very much. I'm glad you mentioned that and about the lines. It's super true. And so by being really close and really low, like you say, it will affect everything. So it's just little movements can really make a big difference. So like Paul says, if we've got the ability through the live view or through the flip, just do that, up, down, look right, above it, whatever. Just move your point of view. Because Adrian's used that to great effect here, and it just elongates, and even that elongation has a slight menace about it, and it brings a speed to it, perhaps, as well, as we kind of rush through the frame. So there we go. That just good thoughts there, chaps. We've got a couple of different, more modern. I mean, not different to what we just did. Obviously, that's looking at the architecture. But I know this is a particular location, Adrian, that you wanted to just talk about.
Yeah, so the Dancing House is a lovely bit of modern architecture. So it's a Foster building, and at the top, on the sort of spherical section, you can see there's a little bit of network going on up top that you can get up to the top of there, and we go up there, and you can shoot the city from there, and it's rather nice to catch the last light from up there, actually. But this is a classic shot of the Dancing House, normally done in colour, of course. But it works just as well, I think, in black and white. And it again, this was taken at night, so this was completely dark. So if you look at the original raw file for this, is almost completely dark with some red lights on, and there's not much else going on. So it's quite a surprise that it lends itself to a high key processing, but it really does. Now there are a few more wires in that picture in real life, so there's a little bit of help going on from good old cloning, but I thought it was interesting. It's a shot. It's one of those shots that we thought, well, I'll go and have a look at it and take it. But yeah, this was quite late on. But it's great subject.
Can I just ask a couple of technical things, which I know that's not always the spirit of why we're doing these things, but I'm intrigued, and obviously as we're all photographers, we like to peek into behind the curtain, I suppose, on that. We just talked about the point of view, and obviously the angle at which you position the camera here adds that sense of dynamism. I would argue whenever you get those diagonals, it does that. But are we looking, is this sort of flash across the front here, Is that a light long exposure, or is that? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so it's a light trail coming from the trams and the cars that are going past theirs. So I think on here, I'm probably on one of the little islands. There's a couple of little walkways you can get across, and you can kind of dance between the cars. But fortunately, because it was so dark, it's quite easy to get a nice long exposure, but down at ground level. So I've got my, I think I've either got it on my little pocket tripod or something like that, I think, to get it quite so low.
So is it fair to say in those scenes where you know, I would imagine you may or may not have an idea of what the finished article might be, but the job is just technically making the best exposure so that you have all the best amount of data so that you can then creatively take that in whatever direction you wish to later?
Yeah, and in an image like this, one of the biggest problems is the dynamic range, because the lights are very bright relative to the background. I mean, if I show you the raw file, you'll see it's nighttime. So that sky is not lit really. It's lit by maybe the lighting further down further behind these buildings, but it's really very dark. So the lamps are always going to be burnt out. There's completely no choice about that. So the question is, how far do they bleed into the rest of the image, you know, to destroy the rest of the detail? And it's just really getting that balance, I guess.
Yeah, super cool image though. I really like it. There's something kind of naughtily funky is what I'll say about that one. That's not a technical term, but I think Paul knows what I mean. He's wearing lights that look naughtily funky as well. So that's cool. There's another one. Is this the same location, Adrian? Sorry.
Yeah, it is the same location. Now this one was a challenge. It was a technical challenge for me because I'm keen to work on modern architecture and sort of bring out that much more modern look that you get with many modern images. If you look at the raw file on this, it's flat grey. This was during the day. There is no detail in the sky. It's completely washed out, and there is no detail on the building. It's just very flat illumination. When I processed it, I realized there was a hint of something going on in the sky. So I had to go really hard with this. So there's lots of dehaze used in the sky, and it really brings out that's what really was in the sky. Once I picked that out, I realized that, okay, if that was the source of the light, it would shine onto the building in here and here and here. So that's where I put in some work on the faces that would have been lit and darkened the other side. So it's entirely constructed, but realistic in terms of what it would have been like if that sun had been poking through there. That was the intention. So it's very much a technical. It's a bit of fun. But the reality is, this is, I think, pretty close to how it would look if the lighting had been more dynamic or more dramatic. And I think that's one of the great opportunities with shooting modern architecture or in black and white in particular, and with flat lighting, is that you get the opportunity to be, you know, the creator of the light, if you like. It's not 100% creative because that cloud was really there, so that all of the essence was there. It just needed a lot of work to bring it through.
And can I ask? This might be a difficult one. Because I've seen a good amount of your urban work, and there's lots of variation in it, but quite often there's also this slight menace, this darkness. And I think sometimes why do you so enjoy that mood feel? You know, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Like a dominating thing.
Yeah.
The way it's been edited, etc.
I find it really exciting. I don't know why. And what I found was, as I started to make images that became darker and darker, I just kept wanting to make them darker and darker still. And the more I made them darker and darker, the more exciting it was. And it's just, I don't know what it is, but I just really like it. So I keep moving the sliders, you know, where I suppose it's the equivalent of in color, you know, you keep moving that saturation slider in the, you know, and you forget how saturated it is. So you keep going to the right. I'm going the other way with the black. You know, it's more and more dehaze. You know, it's 100% dehaze already. Well, I need more dehaze. Give me more dehaze. Well, I put another layer on. You know, I stick on another layer, put another 100% on. And it's, I have to say, when I've done some presentations at camera clubs, people are visibly shocked, you know, at some of the slider positions. You know, you go, oh, it's 100% dehaze. Yeah, but I've got another local adjustment on top. It's got another 100% on. No! But for me, when I was trying to work on where I was going with my own photography, the stuff that really, you know, made your heart go a little bit faster, it was things like that. And I realized that was the essence that spoke to me. And so it was something I needed to do for myself. And so switch off all the likes. Don't go hunting for anybody enjoying it, but actually do it for yourself. And I started to do that. I just said, well, what's the worst that can happen? How far can you go? And actually, I found I could go a lot further than I thought, and I'm really enjoying it.
Well, good, and I'm happy I asked the question, because I think it's really important to try and understand some of the motivations and how we approach things and how we then enjoy those things afterwards. Paul, just if I can ask you a question about this, and I'm going to just pop up Helen's question again. Comment, sorry. It's like a creepy helter-skelter crossed with a cathedral. I would put it to you perhaps that when we have some of these more boundaries pushed, some of these boundaries are pushed, and there's more creative editing on, when you combine that with some different point of views, people start to see things, don't they? People's own fears or concerns or excitements are imparted onto the image. Is that fair to say?
Oh yeah, definitely. And you've only got to look at filmmaking. The power that's in the way something is lit and processed can evoke all kinds of emotions in you. And I think it's the same with this. You can pull and push the files as much as you can. What Adrian's saying there is all the information's there. It just needs bringing out, and you bring it out in accordance with your own emotional response to the subject. And then some of it is trial and error, some of it is play, some of it is, dare I go a bit further? Yes, I dare. And as Mike Beecham just said, Adrian's slider goes up to 11. How cool is that? But that's because he works with Adobe. You see, he's got that magic 11 slider, and we've all got 2.
Yeah. He's got an unfair advantage there. No, that's good. I'm glad we just got into it a little bit, because I think it's important to understand that is such a great creative tool, and then we can start to interact with images in different ways. This is just one example of that different way, and there's a myriad of different ways, which we're going to come to a couple of things with Paul later on as well, which evoke a different response. And I suppose that's what always we're trying to do with photography is find a response either from ourselves and or from the viewer. And in a sort of slight handbrake turn here, we're going to focus on a few what I would call little, detailed images. And Paul, we've got 3 or 4 of yours kind of lined up now, I think, in a row. And I mean, we joked about it before we came on, everybody, after doing a little bit of ribbing of our own Christmas outfits. So Paul, how did you manage to squeeze 2 security cameras into this talk about Prague? But I love it. I do, because I love jaunty things like this. But it's about being visually aware, isn't it? That's a phrase that's come up a lot in these talks. It's just about being receptive to space, to incongruous things, the juxtapositions, as Adrian mentioned earlier. Tell us about your 2 security cameras.
We were actually in an arcade. In some of the arcades, there are fabulous stained glass windows, and this sits next to one that's to Nikola Tesla. And I was looking at the window, and I kept thinking, it's color. Right? And we're on a black and white workshop, and how can I do a stained glass window justice on a black and white workshop? And I thought, what? Don't photograph it. And I was looking down the side of it, and there's these 2 security cameras against this white wall. And I just thought, the shape and the positioning of them, I just fell in love with. And I just kept looking at them and looking at them and looking at them. And I tried a few ideas with the window in the background. And I thought, actually, it's not about the window. It's just about the security cameras and the space, and the fact that they're watching, and they're keeping an eye on us, but they're looking, in different things. And I love the design of them. They're quite space age like, and I just thought, if I just anchor them to the left hand side and leave all that space and make it all white, that's fine. So my white slider sometimes goes to 11. I have the power of the white slider.
You have the Santa slider.
But I know what you mean about it. There's a futuristic look, isn't there? It's got that Star Wars
It's Blake 7. Come on.
Yeah.
That is so Blake 7.
And I think what's quite fun is you were looking and looking at them, and I'm pretty confident the guys monitoring them were looking at you, looking at them.
Yeah, I mean, without. But it's one of the fun things about going to a city that you know a little bit of, is that other things inspire you. At home we take lots and lots of things for granted visually. We switch off, we go into autopilot, and when you go to somewhere new, you suddenly become inspired by the most mundane of things. The trick is to bring that inspiration back with you. So you should use the trips as a catalyst to fire up your creativity, your awareness, your noticing, and make pictures out of the ordinary, because that's all we're doing, is making pictures out of the ordinary, make the interesting extraordinary. Maybe perhaps that's a bit too much, but like this picture, these were just left on the rail outside the Scout Institute cafe, and while we were waiting for everybody to come up, I just love them, and I just kept looking at them and looking at them. I just thought it's so quirky. An umbrella, a hat, and a carrier bag.
Found.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things that just appeals to me. There's no classic beauty in it, but there's a story in there. Who are the people who left them? Who wears a hat like that? And well, oh my goodness.
Well, clearly nobody, because they've lost it.
But I love things like this. There's I always photograph it's sort of the feeling of the person who's left them. I'm sure that people would have preferred to have them at different heights on the rails, but I like to leave things as they were. And the lighting in there is very soft, so they're processed using just the standard Adobe soft black and white soft preset. And I use that quite a lot, and then just tweak a bit, but I really enjoy seeing things like this because other people don't photograph them. You don't get very many likes, but as Adrian said, actually it's not about whether other people like it, it's whether you like it, whether you engage.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm a big fan of these sorts of images, and I think, Paul, it goes back to what we were talking about when we did our mobile phone photography live stream, where we were talking about just constantly being receptive and open to just, small moments of shape and interest and, intrigue that come in front of you. And I know, we talked about, I talked about Sudek earlier, and still lifes is a great form in itself, but I get the feeling you probably feel happiest with these small scenes, these little moments, because you can just kind of relax into them a little bit. Is that fair?
Yeah, I like intimacy. For me, photography is me and the subject. It's not about anybody else, and I love those little things where you can just lose yourself in them, even if it's only for a few minutes. Just lose yourself, the rest of the world fades away, and people might look at you strangely while you photograph, this kind of thing. But actually, it's, there's something about real life that, comes out in these for me. They're real objects handled by real people in real situations. And I just feel a lovely connection to them. And that's what inspires me with this kind of thing. You look at it and you think, well, what is it? Well, actually, does it matter? It's just a water jug and some glasses. But in itself, I just found it simply beautiful. I love the textures in the wall. I love the old piece of wood. The brackets, the cracked plaster. It's just one of those images I could just look at and look at and look at. And that's what I really enjoy about this sort of photography.
Yeah, and I think the simplicity of it as well. I think it's just that, it's not busy, it's not overcomplicated, it's quite a simple subject, and I think being able to spot those in amongst the other things that are going on around, I think that's really good. It's really lovely. I didn't spot that, and I was in the same place at the same moment, but I must have walked straight past that, and Paul spotted it.
He's sneaky like that, though. He'll stand in the way so you can't see it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, nothing to see here.
No,
I think there's these sorts of things that are kind of timeless as well, and that's part of the appeal. We could be looking at things like this, not especially in black and white, and we can be not knowing if we're 50 years ahead, 50 years behind. It doesn't really matter. It's just little moments, isn't it? And I think we've taken that absolute minimalism to a full extent. But
and the curtains.
We've even taken the curtains away, exactly. But I'll tell you what, when I just see this, Paul, I don't want to gild the lily too much, but when you get this soft light and some beautiful texture behind, it can be enough. We can just see beautiful light landing on something, and that's all we need. I mean, that's what photography is most of the time, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, this was a cafe just off the castle. Now, if you've listened to what we've said tonight, you'll notice there's a theme: in a cafe, near a cafe, under a cafe,
on the way to the cafe.
If Adrian told you the truth about the dancing house, the reason we go to the top is there's a bar at the top.
Yes.
But this for me, we were sat there. It's actually a coat hook. It's not, but it's weird because right at the bottom of the frame is where the tables are, so you can't hang coats on it. You can only hang like handbags on it. And I just thought, I love the way the space is all above it, and it just started to intrigue me while I was sitting there with my coffee, and I just wanted to photograph it. And when I got up to photograph it, I remember people looking at me as if I'd gone completely mad because I was standing in this cafe photographing the thing, but I was concentrating so hard on making sure it was level and the symmetry was right in terms of the spacing to either end, but not rearranging all the hooks, because I love the randomness of the hooks and that lovely little bit of light just catching the plaster in the background. That is, like you say, it's enough. It's enough for me, and it's a picture I look at and I always smile. And then maybe because I'm slightly mad, but that's okay.
I think everybody watching knows you're fully mad, and everyone in the workshop, I'm sure, would have been moderately aware of that by that point as well. But no, I'm happy we could put those three together, because the point is about being aware, and being okay with those gentle, simple moments. Now, again, a slight change in pace, but we wanted to talk about some of the different types of scenes we can run into in Prague. And obviously, Adrian, we've talked before about symmetry and about really being bold with positioning and about that. So tell us where we are firstly, and then obviously a little bit of the scene.
Yeah, so this is Letna Park, which is a beautiful park, and it sort of looks down over Prague. So if you go a little bit beyond the edge there, you'll be looking down onto Prague city itself. So we're across the river, up in the park. The park, is one of those. It's a glorious place, actually. And in the winter, you've got the stark sort of high contrast light. It's full of trees with no leaves. So you get these great big fabulous black shadows streaking across the ground. And this is the metronome. And the metronome it doesn't always work. It's apparently it could be the world's largest metronome. And it's supposed to be moving, but mostly it doesn't. So I don't suppose it can be a metronome if it's not moving. At least the music's very slow. But it's a great vantage point, and it caught my eye, obviously, and I thought, this is great. And I'm very, very happy to have very strong geometric shapes, and it's one of the things that draws me to sort of modern architecture. I love that, and I'm very happy to put things bang in the middle, no problem with that at all. And this subject just worked perfectly, and I was very lucky because it was vertical, because quite often it's not vertical. So so it just drew me. And then, of course, the tiling on the leading up here, this rather beautiful tiling as well, that kind of leads in, so that those patterns are rather lovely. And as usual, it's just kind of getting the balance, lovely threatening sky going on there, a little bit of help with the old editing. But yeah, it's a great position. And then you've got that fabulous graffiti going on again. It's all over the place. And it reminds me of a couple of other places where, where the graffiti kind of starts to become a real part of the city. Actually, it's all over the place. You get these wonderful, ancient doorways that are graffitied all over the place, and actually, there's just something about that. They seem to work a bit very incongruous, but actually, they just seem to work together. So you could spend the whole weekend or the whole week that we were there. You could just take the graffiti. Actually, the graffiti itself and the surfaces on which they are sat are fabulous. You could certainly enjoy that.
It gives you a theme, doesn't it, that can run between things, even whatever else you might be shooting around it, modern or more old-fashioned, you've got that constant theme with you. I just want to say, actually, to everyone, thanks very much for all the engagement tonight. Lots of great comments coming in. Do hit us if you have any comments or queries I can put to the chaps. We've got about 15 minutes left, and we've got a few images to go through. And as ever, if you're enjoying what we do, hit the like button or hit the share button, and we really appreciate that. As we carry on through, we talked about light. Obviously, light is super important. And when you get something like this, I'm transfixed by it already. My eyes are sort of darting all around it. It looks a little bit like a keyhole, actually. I know it isn't. But tell us here, Adrian, about the locale and some of the interesting photographic opportunities there.
Well, this is the Spanish synagogue, actually, and when you go into this place, it's just stunning. It's breathtaking. It's beautifully gilded and decorated. The roofs are unbelievable. Gold everywhere, it seems. A massive, great church organ in one side with huge pipes, and so there's like a myriad of things you could take. And I was drawn initially to take big, wide shots, so my wide angle lens is doing its maximum to get as much of that ceiling in and so on. And then once I kind of had done some of that, I wandered around and actually these windows were just amazing. And of course it doesn't look like that, right? So because your eyes are seeing the whole of the scene and they're seeing the people buzzing around, but that light is there and it is going to be glorious when you capture it. So long as you make sure your exposure doesn't blow out because of the window, then the textures and so on, then the illumination that comes from that window is just fantastic. So yeah, there were plenty of opportunities to take these much more intimate shots, but almost everybody was just wowed by the glorious and opulent sort of nature of the roof and the decoration throughout. But these are lovely.
Adrian, sorry, we've had a question from an interesting gentleman called Paul, surname of Sanders, who asked, was it open during the workshop, Adrian?
Unfortunately, they were refurbishing it when we went there. I was absolutely gutted. I couldn't believe it. We arrived and I was thinking, this is a fantastic place, and I was bigging it up, and we got there and we got, oh, no, they're closed for redecoration or refurbishment. Yeah, which is a great shame, but I'm sure it will be open next time.
He's a naughty boy, isn't he? But it does lead us, semi-segue. I'm going to vaguely segue this. Obviously, when we go and do tours, this is a wider point. As photographers and as leaders, we will have been to those places often multiple times over many visits, and often we tend to do our shooting on the recce's, or I know I always put a couple of days on the end or the beginning of trips so that I can do a bit of shooting for myself. Because the questions come in from Michael here to both of you guys. Do you feel the pressure not to shoot when on a workshop so that your attention can be 100% on those who attend? Now, there's multiple ways of answering that, but I'm going to let you two give your own kind of opinions on that. Adrian, if we just go to you first, and then if you want to throw to Paul.
Yeah, I very much leave the camera in the bag. I think I'm there to help, but at the same time, I've heard that people are worried that if that's the case, then sure, it's obviously not worth taking. If you haven't bothered to get your camera out, then why would they? So I totally get that. I guess for me at the moment, it's about trying to help as much as I can in getting other people to get those shots. So at the moment, I'm tending to leave my camera in the bag. In fact, I think I probably only took the phone with me when we wandered around. I think and I had my laptop, so we ended up doing processing back in the hotel. So I think that's the area that I could probably provide that much more support. But out and about, my thoughts are heading towards having some sort of more sort of support process. So actually, I'm really interested in the idea of having the laptop out when we're out there shooting and being able to take cards, give instant feedback, be able to see exactly what they're getting, and being able to sort of use that feedback process to help you take the shots whilst you're still there, rather than go, oh, I wish I'd done this or I wish I'd done that. So that's an area we'll hopefully explore next time round.
And Paul, just can we get your thoughts on that? Because there's lots of different facets of this.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, because for me, I'm there to help and support, like Adrian says. And there is that thing where people have said to me, why aren't you taking pictures? Is it not any good? So what I sort of balance it off, I make sure that the people are okay, they're doing some stuff, and then I show what I'm seeing. So if I'm with somebody in the same area, I'll photograph something, I'll show them how I'm seeing it and how I'm composing it and how I'm using the lens or a position to sort of help guide them, rather than do it on their camera and then them have your, you know, what is essentially your picture. It's guiding by demonstration. You know, but my photography at these things always comes second to the clients, because the clients are paying. You know, they don't pay for us to go to take photographs. And if I see something that's incredible and I really want to, I just say to the people I'm with, you know, look, this is actually too good to be true. Do you mind if I at least try and get a picture? But I always put the client's needs first. I think it's really important that, you know, we don't lose sight of why we as leaders are there. You know, it's to help, it's to support, it's to demonstrate, it's to inspire. And you can do that by leaving your camera in the bag. You can do that by having your camera out. You can do that in the way that Adrian did in Prague, where, you know, it was amazing that we would sit down in a cafe, he would whip his laptop out and people would give him cards, and he'd do a quick impromptu processing session. And then people are able to move on to the next location, inspired by what they've seen can be done with their file, and actually their sort of timidity at shooting suddenly disappears. You know, they start to lose their inhibitions when they know their files can be actually pushed quite hard, and they start gaining a confidence, and that all comes from that sort of, you know, different styles of leadership and inspiration.
Yeah, good stuff, chaps. Really great answers. There's a lot of stuff in that question. Thank you, Michael, for popping that in. And I think, yeah, the job of any tuition is to ultimately render yourself unneedable. The job is not to create mini Pauls and mini Adrians or mini Sams. Yeah. It's to help the person become the person. And I know, having worked with both of these two, they do that, and they do that in different ways and lots of ways. So I think that's really cool. As we sort of approach towards the end, Paul, we have 2 or 3 of, again, we've curated these with a great deal of thought, at least 7 minutes before we started. We've curated these together because I wanted to talk about, actually, I'm going to just bring a comment back in. Sorry, everyone, I'm trying to multitask here, but I think it's quite interesting that Nigel made the point. I learned a valuable lesson a while ago. Instead of just going for a certain type of image and coming back with a handful, to shoot the little moments too that complement the full story. And Nigel made that very pertinent point, Paul, whilst we were talking about some of your smaller still life scenes, as it were, before. But I wanted to put these in because of the shapes and the sensuous, if I can say, nature of some of these. And without getting too hot under the collar, it's only 8:53, so I'm going to keep this clean.
Before the
before the watershed, exactly. But where are we, Paul? And just explain that to us first, and I'll walk through a couple of these.
Yeah, so we're right on top of the hill in the I think it's the Royal Palace, isn't it, Adrian? I've forgotten the name of it. The big building on the top.
Yes, yeah, Prague Castle.
Prague Castle, that's it. So we're in Prague Castle, and that has the most wonderful architecture in places. And I'm a sucker for white plaster. I love it in all of its shapes and forms. I love the light that catches it, the reflections, the shadows, the curves. And you're right, it is sensual. And as you know, I mean, Helen's just said, just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water. And I hadn't thought that it was a shark for a second until she said that. And now I can only see the shark, and we're going to need a bigger boat.
Oh, I can see Star Wars. There's a little.
I saw the shark as well, actually. Yeah, I saw the shark earlier when we looked at it.
Oh, don't take the mick.
It's a little dwarf in a white cap. It's a Christmas dwarf. There we go.
I often, these kind of things just go overlooked because they're just bits of concrete or bits of plasterwork. But I, from my background as a news photographer, we were always taught shoot the details as well as the big picture. And the more and more details I shoot, the more I get under the skin of wherever I am. And it helps me develop a broader sense of a place. You get the mix of architectures, the mix of cultures, and it all starts to come together. It all weaves its web on you, and gradually you get sucked into the spell. So if you go looking for a particular picture, you rarely find it. If you just go willing to photograph anything that catches your eye, you will find the big picture will be revealed to you because you're interested in everything. You're open to whatever opportunities, come to you, even if it is just a round piece of concrete and a wall. But it has a beauty all of its own, and and with this kind of thing, I pay great attention to where I stand and how I position the camera, what angle I want. So I'm looking slightly up, but I'm right in the middle of the circle. And I do all that before I press the button. So you're paying whatever the subject is respect by taking the time. So it doesn't matter what it is. Much like you do with your own still life, Sam. You spend a lot of time over the subject, looking at it and working out what is the right way to pay the best tribute to it. And it's only a piece of concrete with a hole in it. Only an archway. But look at the way the light affects it. Look at the shadows. Look at the line, the simplicity. And that then reminds me of that this particular archway. This is in an old part of the castle. This is hundreds of years old, and yet it's beautiful. So somebody's designed it. They've plastered it. That you can sort of almost feel the hands that have done it and then painted it and repainted it and repainted it and repainted it. And to me, it's just beautiful. Love it.
Yeah. No, well said, and absolutely love them. And I think actually, the way we put these three together, obviously from a curating point of view, you always would. But I think this is something Adrian and I touched on last week, actually, in the creative, 2 weeks ago, that if you are in somewhere like this and you're seeing these beautiful scenes like this, these could work really beautifully as a three next to each other, in a little triptych, a selection of 9, 12, 8, however, it doesn't matter. But I think the more the cumulative power of them and that piece of them or the sensuality of them or whatever it is amplified even more with that. And it's a great way to think about shooting in sets. I could go on about that forever, but we won't do that. A couple of quick comments. Helen, thank you. I love that series. Simplicity is gorgeous.
Thank you.
So that, yes, very kind. There's a couple of great comments I'm going to come back to actually as we come to an end. And we wanted to end on this really broad kind of, I'm sucked in totally to this centerpiece as well. And I know, Adrian, that's because of your mastery of directing our eyes through images, which is something that
I pointed the camera at it and pressed the button.
Well, yes, you started with that, and then lots of other things happened after it.
A few things, yeah.
Yeah, but I think I wanted to put this in because it does set a slightly different scene to everything we've touched on before. We've gone from the extremely small, extremely close, extremely simple. We've seen the modern, we've seen the urban, we've seen the old, we've seen the mist, we've seen the atmos. And I think, like Nigel said, actually, and Paul, when you mentioned about shooting from a press point of view, it's very easy just to go and do the things we might always do, but to actually come back with a sort of compelling and intriguing story about a whole place, it's great to have different, vistas and different scenes and ways of looking at things.
Yeah. Yeah, this picture in particular, the castle is actually quite high up, and we're looking down on it from where we are from there. So we're up on the sort of there's almost like the city is in a bowl, and we're skirting round, and that Gothic cathedral is immense. I mean, when you get up close to it, it is absolutely enormous, and yet you can't shoot it very close because you might just be able to see here. It's actually surrounded by a very tall building all the way around it. So there's no way of getting close enough to get a decent shot of which really properly gives that scale. But from here, you get that sense, and it's the darkness of the stonework and so on that gives that fabulous contrast. And it just so happened it was a grey overcast sky again, and those grey overcast skies have got great detail in them that are just waiting to be teased out. So that all works lovely. The trees in the foreground just acting in the darkness. Actually, it's quite hard to find the gaps where you can shoot this shot. There's only one or two places where there's a break in the trees that you can actually get a view through to the castle from up there. So it's really lovely. And this is a walk, up through and around the city. So with lots of really interesting things to shoot. But the big general view kind of really brings the whole place together. That the Prague Castle is the sort of centerpiece of the city, and it is really lovely to see it from here.
Yeah, fab. And I love the way you've dealt with that, balancing the darker foreground and the darker sky, and it just helps bring us in. And really, we just travel straight to that slightly menacing looking cathedral in the center there. Now, time wise, we are up. Amazingly, we're fairly well on time tonight. I'm just I wondered where that was coming from through the evening.
Can't beat a good phone app.
There we go. Oh, really? There you go. Just quick ones I'm going to quickly pick up on. Teresa makes an interesting point. As a client, I'm more than happy for leaders to take their own shots, but it obviously depends on the knowledge level of the clients, as some need a lot more support. And yeah, that is an interesting topic. So I'm glad we got into that. Another quick one I wanted to just say, which was very nice, was from Ralph, who recognized. Ralph, we've had you on these, which is great. It's great to see the three of you together. The relaxed banter shows you are comfortable in each other's company, along with some diverse and great black and white. Even with a delay, we're moderately comfortable in each other's company.
Yeah, don't believe that for a second, Ralph.
I thought Paul was going to sell my delay for an extra 5 seconds there. And Eleanor, thank you once again for a great evening. And actually, maybe I won't. It's maybe a bit too much of a thing for me. But thank you to the three of you for tonight. In particular, a huge thank you to Sam. Oh God, I can't read this. Hosting these Tuesday events. No, but Sarah, that makes a good point. I think a lot of people have found some of these interesting, hopefully, and you've got to know the team a little bit more. Some of the team. Some of you I know are Light and Land guests and clients, and you will have been out with Adrian. You might have been out with me. You will have been out with Paul, Astrid. Anyone who's been on throughout the course of the year. And for me, I would just like to say thank you to everyone who has come on with me. You've all been very good to give up your time. And I think, like I say, for the viewers out there, I hope you've got to know us a little bit more, as well as the locations we've been talking about. And we've shown what a broad church I think we have as Light and Land of photographic leaders with their own concepts, their own aesthetics, and as well as all the great locations that we go to. What I would say is Michael wants to go to Prague. Prague can come to you, Michael, in 2021, because the 11th to the 14th of March 2021, all being well, Adrian and Paul will be taking this Prague tour in black and white, and I believe there are a few spaces available. I know people are obviously very conscious of the COVID thing, so they might be hanging on. But we do have flexibility as Light and Land to move your bookings, transfer your bookings, refund you, whatever. So do feel confident that we can look after you from that point of view. Loads of comments coming in. I can't get to them all, but a little bit of teasing of Paul's shirts. I think that's fair. What I would finish up with, thank you everybody that's watched along.
Thank you very much, Mike. I appreciate that.
Yes. What I will say, we will be back in 2021 in January, February, March. We will be back. We will be doing 2 per month. So we'll be down to every other week. Okay. But we will be back. We'll be doing live tours like this. We'll be doing the editing, Adrian and I, and maybe an extra guest, and things like that. So keep your eye out. We'll let you all know on the newsletters and on social media. But Adrian, I'll let you say goodbye, and then we'll throw to Paul. Paul, anything left to say? Or, I mean, that's killed it, hasn't it, really?
I'm lost. Just have a really lovely Christmas, everybody. Thank you for your time on these Tuesday evenings, and thank you to Sam and Adrian for being Santa's little helpers.
Yeah, something like that. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate it. Have a great time. Have a safe Christmas, for goodness sake. And we'll see you all in 2021. Goodbye for now.
Bye.